Welcome back. This is still TV3Newday. It's time now for the big issues. And in the studios, I have Akosua Menu. She is a Deputy CEO of the National Youth Authority. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm great.
Yeah? You sat through Johnny's Bites, today.
I sat through Johnny's Bites, and I would say that, one of the things that huge media platforms like yours are supposed to do is to educate and inform. And I believe that what he seeks to do is to bring attention to some of the ills or some of the problems that we have. And even though it's often very spicy, I was telling him that he could add some ketchup on the side.
Oh, you should add some ketchup. It's too hot for you,
Too hot, but by and large, he brings attention to some of the things that as caretakers, we have to pay attention to and resolve. So,
well,
kudos to him. I just want him to tone down just a little bit sometimes. Sometimes it's too...
Jenny, I can bash you. It's too hot in the morning. It's too early this morning to be biting at everybody. That's what Akosua says. I don't know what lawyer Joyce Bar-Mukhtar will have to say about this, but she is a special aide to former President John Dramani Mahama and also a former Deputy Minister of Transport. Good morning.
Good morning.
I like how you're smiling. Is it too hot for you as well?
Oh, no. I think literally and figuratively, he bites as hard as he can.
Okay.
And of course, when he puts his fangs into you, you certainly feel it, just like Akosua has felt it this morning. I think it pricks the conscience very quickly and sharply. So certainly a fantastic avenue for a great editorial and one that literally wakes us up to our responsibilities.
We won't have a problem with it when the tables turn and it's NDC that's in power. Would you still think that it's fantastic?
We were at the end of that stick forever from Akosua and everybody else. And I met Fatima a few days ago. I remember her heavy tree one time on a radio station in Kumasi. I literally didn't understand the word of the tree she spoke. And yet she went on and on. And I think the biggest mistake was when I tried to respond to her, I practically totally misunderstood and said an absolutely wrong thing. So, they've actually, what? Johnny is doing very, it's mild.
Oh, it's mild, eh?
Oh, it's mild.
Oh, I see. Interesting. Anyway, Johnny, a message to you this morning. But good to have you ladies in the studios. And, well, of course, it's a ladies' show this morning. We'll also be talking about another issue that relates to gender, especially women and children. And the person at the forefront of this conversation would be the Gender Minister, Adwoa Safo, who also doubles as the MP for Dom Kwabenya. She's been off work for about a year. And, there's been a lot of hullabaloo about whether she should be recalled, whether she should remain. Recently, she spoke to the media and said that the only person who can relieve her of her job is the president because he put her there. But until then, she still holds herself as Minister of Gender and Social Protection. Her constituents have been complaining. They're saying that there's really no one to represent them in Parliament. This is not what she promised them. And so they're asking questions and asking when she would be returning. Well, she's supposed to be present before the Privileges Committee to answer some questions as to why she has missed at least 15 or 16 parliamentary sit-ins. And, well, the ranking member and, in fact, the chairman of the Privileges Committee in Parliament, they have all been confused as to how to reach her. Yesterday, we're told that the Privilege Committee says that they will have to verify some supporting documents that were presented by the Asin Central MP, who is also before the Privileges Committee to answer some questions. But apart from that, they intend to publish through the media, a communique to Adwoa Safo. So at least finally she would hear that they are trying to summon her to a meeting. Because when she spoke to Joy FM, she did mention that the first time she was hearing that she had been summoned by the Privileges Committee was in the media. So ranking member Kweku Ricketts-Hagan has told us, what is being done exactly and why they intend to even go ahead and publish this communique in the media. Take a look.
We met Honorable Kennedy Lapan today. Obviously, a decision has not been made, so I wouldn't want to sort of give any details on the matter yet. But we have seen him. He's given him reasons why he did not come in, and he's provided some evidence which we will have to further examine to make a determination. We need to look at the documents, or get experts to look at the document because it's a medical in nature, to maybe look at it further.
Henry Kwasi was supposed to appear today. He didn't come. What reasons did he ascribe?
Well, I have been informed that he's got a flu. You know, there's a bad flu going on at the moment, and I think he's caught one, unfortunately. So he did, indicate to us, or we received it on time to say that he will not be able to make an appearance. So we'll reschedule, him to come in.
What about Adwoa Safo? We get the indication that you have written to her. You intend to publish her invitation in the dailies. Have you had any communication so far?
Well, we haven't. We have obviously communicated to her, but we haven't got a response back, from her in terms of, that she was going to appear or not. Yesterday was the day meant for her. So we gave her an option whether we do in person or do Zoom. So we set up a Zoom system, which I was told that the link had already been sent to him as part of the invitation sent to him. So we were there waiting to hear that, she will either come online in terms of appearing on the Zoom, and then we can.
Did she acknowledge receipt of the link?
No, we have not. As I said, we have not heard anywhere we met her, Honorable Kennedy.
Interesting that they still can't reach her. This will be the second time that they are summoning her. Earlier, they had said that they had tried to reach her by sending a letter to her office. They sent her an email. They tried to reach her on WhatsApp. They gave her an option of Zoom. They still didn't hear from her. So this time around, they decided to resort to publishing it in the media. But Minority Chief Whip Mutaka Mohammed Mubarak says that it's embarrassing for the Dom Kwabinya MP, Sarah Adwoa Safo, to be served summons in the media. So according to him, he says that he praised the embattled MP response to the Privileges Committee to avoid dragging the name of Parliament into disrepute. Let's take a look at what he said exactly.
Where even an opportunity for a Zoom is offered her is very worrying for me. I don't know her situation. The last time I checked from my colleagues on the committee, at least they are very sure that she's been served through her research assistant, who has been served the letter, and he confirmed that he has forwarded it to her and she has received it. Well, that's what the research assistant is saying. Where you are getting to a point, for me, it's getting to an embarrassing point where they have to use the standing orders, I think 205, where they have to now publish into the dailies as a way of summon a member of parliament. You wait till they do this, where even the opportunity for Zoom meeting has been offered you. For me, it's worrying. It is my hope and prayer that she responds so that we help overcome this challenge. And remember, the Zoom meeting she's going to have, it will be with just members of parliament. Fortunately, it is in a closed camera. So if there are even things that are supposed to be secretive, she knows that every member of the committee, the members of parliament, are under oath not to reveal secrets. I'm praying that her lack of response should not lead to a point where a drastic decision will be taken that may not be good, not only for her, but for the parliament itself.
That's the Minority Chief Whip, Honorable Mutaka Mubarak. Because I'll start off with you, of course, knowing that she represents the NPP and you're here speaking on behalf of the NPP as well. Is it embarrassing that the Privileges Committee has to resort to the media to try and signal her and communicate to her that it's her turn to appear before the Privileges Committee? They have said that it's been very difficult to reach her.
Right. So good morning to your viewers. Good morning to my big sister here. She hates it when I say big sister. Good morning to you, Bella. I think the last time I was here, it came up again on what was happening with her, where she is, what's going on. And when it comes to her situation, especially when she mentioned that she was taking some time off to pay attention to her ward, and the fact that the question was how much time should be given to anybody in such a circumstance, and I made the point that it's not easy, it's not quite easy raising a family and balancing it with the politics, and especially for her, a minister, an MP, a mother, it's quite tasking sometimes. be compared to the men. If, let's say, there's an emergency meeting, all they do is just pick up their bags and go. For the women, you have to start wondering, is there food enough for the kids to, cover a period? Is there a trusted family relation that would keep an eye on your family? If your spouse or partner is around, is it convenient for them as well? These are the considerations women make, And when information was that her, I think it was a son that was mentioned, was unwell, I was quite worried because you don't know what sort of ailment it is. However, I think that for Parliament, their standing orders are quite clear because, it's a house of records and of rules. So, according to their standing order, I think it's standing order 16, a member shall not absent his or herself from a meeting 15 consecutive times, I think. Without informing
permission,
them, without permission, or, in writing to the speaker. And any member who infringes on this would have to come before the committee. I think that at this point, we would have to let it run its course and see whatever would transpire from it. The information that her research assistant was able to notify her, I think that if that was the same channel they used, it could have gone the way it is. But I appreciate Muntaka's submission when he says it gets a bit embarrassing somewhat for the House because MPs are supposed to conduct themselves a certain way. But in this particular instance, when the health of someone in question and someone as dear to her as, as a child, and that is where the considerations of whether you put family first or whether it's commitment first to Ghana and to your constituents. And for this, it's not that simple for anybody to handle, and especially for her. And for me, I don't actually have access to her. I wish I could have a conversation with her. It will give me a little insight as to what she really is going through. But I feel there is something that she's going through. It's not easy for her to be out there in the public eye, being scrutinized the way she is. And it's difficult because often, even with public figures, Bella, we've sat here and people threw all sorts of allegations at as well sitting here. And you can't give oxygen to it by responding to all the things all the time. So for her case, it's almost as if she's caught between a rock and a hard place because she's given enough information to suggest that it's a family situation and she needs to take some time off. But there are fair questions on if it does affect her constituents. And she doesn't work alone. You usually have a team, your constituency executives and all the people that help you to put your office in order to even function if you are not available. And that's leadership, delegating where you can't do it all. But now that the Privileges Committee has kicked in, and I understand she's not the only one. There's also Honorable Kennedy Japan, and there's also, I think, Honorable Kennedy actually availed himself.
He did, yesterday.
And then Honorable Henry Korte, who I understand, there's an influenza going around and people are catching it. So it's not, for him, also has its considerations. But I don't know, my heart goes out to her, my prayers go out to her. Whatever she's going through, I hope she recovers. Because, it hasn't been easy, really, for women in the politics. Going into Parliament alone, so difficult. If you're not financially capable, if you're not well resourced, if you do not have the clout to even fundraise to get in there, it always becomes a boys' club. And I always say so because even in representation right now, it's 20-20 on each side. I'd love to see half of the House being women because we know what they bring to bear. But a situation like hers now brings a question. People make very hurtful comments about this is what happens when you give women opportunity. They'll put their family first and make all sorts of considerations. But it's the family that grows to become the constituency that we all know. You can't operate without women. So for her, with the Privileges Committee, I actually hope that she avails herself. I don't know what consequences thereafter if she doesn't avail herself. We'll probably read on that. But I think at this point, they also are finding it a bit challenging and giving room. A year is a long time, honestly, And provision has been made in her constituency, in her ministry, for instance. Like I said, there's still work going on and all that. But whatever
is there really? In her constituency especially, because her constituents have been complaining. Yesterday we heard from the constituency secretary. We hope that we'll be able to raise him on the line. But he says that all the executives are tired. They are tired because she's not availing herself to be questioned. And in fact, the last time that we checked how active she was even in the ministry was when she released a second letter reinstating, the Mrs. Gertrude Kwenu, Kwashi Gauso, yeah, I think that's her name. That was when we really heard from her. And this was on the 20th of May, 2021.
Yes.
So ever since that point, because there have been conversations that she was not too happy that, powers that be asked her to reinstate the woman after she had released a letter asking her to vacate her position. So there have been concerns. Yeah, of course. But then there have been concerns because after that point, we never really heard from her again. She went on leave. She was supposed to return in August, and the president extended her leave again indefinitely.
Okay.
And we haven't seen her return to the ministry. We haven't seen her act as the MP for Dom Kwabenya. That should clearly be a problem. You don't think that she's brought this upon herself?
Bella, I think nobody wishes for their son or daughter to be unwell. The nature of the illness is, to me, is unknown. There's no diagnosis or there's no ailment that has been put out there to my knowledge. Now, the question is, let's say on humanitarian grounds, at what point do we allow for somebody who, and she's the information on her son being unwell was just a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Prior to that, she had actually requested, and that was formally, which initiated a decision to make Madame Sisi Adapa, who is actually the Minister for Sanitation, to act as caretaker minister. I recall that as it will be about 6 months ago in January, and this was, I actually met Madame Cecilia at a social gathering. Yeah. We're actually talking about these kids that, hog the streets and traffic lights and whatnot. And she was giving some history and background as to where they were coming from and how they were even guided by adults who never get on the streets, but they sort of, collect all these, beg on the streets and go and take it back. And she had found a way for them to get off the streets. And I actually noticed that because in East Legon, around the Emmanuel I area, they were no longer there, and all you could actually see were hawkers, So it told me that she was actually on the ball in doing certain things. But I agree with you that, yes, indeed, if she's not available, it would have impact on her constituency. And now if her executives are saying that they are tired, it's a signal that maybe something else has to be done. But I do not want to throw her under the bus unduly, because I feel that, look, if your child is unwell, Bella, there's nothing you wouldn't do to make sure that you are there for them in that space and time.
Even when you're holding your constituents to ransom, literally, because they are relying on you to formulate laws and policies in parliaments for them.
Absolutely.
But you say your child is unwell, totally understood. But should she not then step aside and allow someone else who is capable to do the job, as minister especially? Should she not have resigned?
So the thing is, as to the consideration to resign or not, it's her personal prerogative. I cannot speak to it. I'm putting myself in her shoes as a mother. Obviously, for somebody like her, we've seen her contribution to the politics. In 2012, when after having lost the election, she was one of the loudest voices when it came to going to the court to address the issues raised during the elections. And during the election petition, she was also very, very vocal in highlighting the reforms that need to that we need to go through. And I'll say, by and large, she was one of the few female voices that occupy the space in pushing for this. And ultimately, we saw the changes that happened. But again, as to whether she should resign, I can't prescribe that remedy. I cannot. It's her. It's whatever she's going through. I can't even. All I can do is empathize. And I keep wondering, if I was in her shoes, what would I do?
What would you actually do?
Bella, so the first thing she did was to inform that she had some time off, which was one. And secondly, she asked for more time, during which her a decision was taken to let somebody oversee her
ministry.
Her ministry.
But that was to the president. She had not even informed the speaker of her intention to be absent.
Yes.
It was at that time when there were questions being raised about whether she should be recalled, hauled before the Privileges Committee, sometime in March, was when she formally informed the speaker that she needed some extra weeks off.
Which should mean that there was a lag in also her communicating what really it was. Now, there are some MPs who we don't get as much attention or scrutiny that go through challenges. Sometimes health challenges, they start their treatment here, and sometimes they have to go outside to go and, for further counsel or to actually cure themselves. It's not in doubt that her ministry is one of the critical ministries that actually goes to our socio-economic development, especially when it comes to the demographic of women being almost, actually more than the men, if you're going to use the data that the population census gathered. And even with the voting patterns too, it was 800,000 more women than men. One of the things I would like to see, and I hope she comes back quickly, is the removal of the tax on sanitary pads. When prices go up, it affects these basic needs that women go through on a monthly. And young girls are suffering because of this. But ultimately, whatever it is, I think that she now has come to a point where she has to take a hard decision. Do I let go of my constituency and focus on my family? Because the truth is, when all is said and done, when you're done with the politics, it's your family that will be there for you.
Well, speaking of whether she should decide to let go, of the work that she's left hanging and focus on her family or not. Yesterday, we had Theophilus and Labi speaking, and he had mentioned that Honorable Adwoa Safo had been unfair to a constituency. We have him on the line. He's the NPP Constituency Secretary for Dom Kwabenya. Good morning, Theophilus.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me as well.
Now, you have said that Honorable Adwoa Safo has been very unfair to her constituents, and especially to the executives of the NPP office in the constituency. Tell us why.
Well, what it is that you're working with a group of people. You're not working in isolation. And as human as we are, there's bound to be challenges here and there. But if you have some challenges relating to yourself or your family, and you're working with a group of people, it is always ideal to communicate appropriately to the people you're working with. And as I'm speaking to you as a constituency administrator and the secretary for the constituency, I can speak on authority that none of the constituency executives knows where Adwoa Safo is honorable. And
how is that even possible?
We don't know where she is, and we don't know what is happening to her, because she hasn't communicated formally, officially, or anything to any other executives.
When was the last time, sorry to cut you, but when was the last time that any of the executives ever spoke to her, or at least got in touch with her?
I think that was about Christmas. That she came to the constituency to commission the National Health Insurance Office. And within a week, she was gone. She had stayed away for some time, and we had the news that she's back. She didn't even officially call us to tell us that she's back, basically. All we got to know that she was commissioning a project in the constituency. So we said, oh, that's good news. We were expecting that the Honorable will be in town, so we worked together. Within a week, she's gone, without proper notification to anyone or something of that sort. Trust me. I think we have gotten there. Adwoa Safo has been given all the opportunities in this world to make amends since this issue cropped up. But I don't think she's been fair to the constituents and the party in the constituency. That's all I can say.
I mean, what are the constituents also saying? Because this is your view of what the executives think about her absence from the constituency. But I've heard some of the women in the Dom market even say that no matter what, if they recall Adwoa Safo, that means that they are not going to vote for the NPP at all. They will stay away from the election. So in actual fact, they understand that she's a mother, she has a child, and she needs to cater to her child's needs at this point. So they would patiently wait for her. These are some of the women speaking at the Dom constituency. So what exactly are they saying? Because we're hearing this, then that means that they are patient enough to wait for her.
I am surprised as what you're saying now. Probably it might be the opinion of just one person.
Okay.
I don't know how many people you sampled to interview them in that respect. I have been in this constituency and I have worked in this constituency for over 10 years as a constituency executive.
Okay.
And the reaction of people and the anger of people not having their representation at the parliament is so high. I don't know when you made this. Day in and day out, the anger of the constituents grow because we have been expecting and we have been expectant far too long. Do you understand me? That's what I'm saying. This issue is not just yesterday. It's been going on for some time now. You understand what I'm saying? And we as a party, we have about 2 years going into elections, and Dominic Abenya is the breadbasket of the party as far as votes are concerned. So if you get up every day and your party is and your constituency is in the news for the bad reason, it becomes a source of concern and worry to you as a party leader. That's what we are talking about. And there must be a cut-off point for everything.
When you say cut-off points, what exactly do you mean by that?
What I'm saying is that whatever the story, Adwoa should try, Honorable Adwoa Safo should try all she could to make sure we end this issue. It shouldn't be every day that our name should be in the news for this very bad reason. It shouldn't continue. It should not continue. And she's been given every opportunity that she deserves to rectify things.
Now,
So
you're not the only one who's struggling to reach her. I mean, we've heard from the Privileges Committee as well. They say that they've been trying to summon her so she can appear before the Privileges Committee to answer why she's been absent in Parliament. What do you make of that?
That vindicates us. Probably if it has been only the executive who are crying to say that we are not able to reach her and all that, probably people will say we are making up. Now, the Privileges Committee is saying same. So it is not easy reaching Honorable Adwoa Safo. As we speak, we don't even know where she is. The last time we saw her was on a Zoom with Joy News, and that was it.
What do you expect to happen at this point? Let's just say that she appears before the Privileges Committee. Of course, they're supposed to send a report back to the plenary for Parliament to vote. But let's just say they decide that at this point she cannot hold herself again as MP. Would that be fair for you?
What I'm saying now is that if there's no fairness, then she hasn't been fair to herself first. That is the basic of the thing. You don't expect someone to be so fair to you if you're not fair to yourself. Because if there's any fairness, she should be fair to herself. She should make effort to make things clear to everybody, to the Parliamentary Privileges Committee, to the constituents, and to the Executive Committee that she is working with. She should make things clear so that at least we can speak to issues on her behalf. But now, if I don't know where you are, I don't know what exactly is happening to you, how can I speak to issues in fairness for you?
If she comes back, comes back, would you welcome her with open arms?
Why not? Because for a long time, wherever I have been to, I say for this issue to be curtailed, she should show up. We have been voted together to work together. Okay. So we are prepared to work together with her.
All right.
But we cannot work with you when we can't find you.
All right. Thank you so much, Theophilus. Theophilus Ansah-Labi is the Dom Kwabena Constituency Secretary for the NPP, and he says that Honorable Adwoa Safo has not been fair. Lawyer, what do you say to all of this and the fact that at this point, the Privileges Committee says our only means of communicating with her would have to be to publish that summon in the media? We've heard from her constituency execs as well. They're saying she hasn't been fair.
Well, thank you very much. A very good morning to you, Bella, and good morning to Akosia and everybody else who's watching us. I have listened very carefully to the sentiments expressed by Akosia and, of course, from her own constituents. I probably empathize with whatever her reasons are. And I have no doubt in my mind that this is a conversation that has been raging for quite some time. You know, the teacher in me would like to start from what the Constitution says and what the orders of Parliament actually have in store for all of us. And I believe that under Article 97(1)(c) of the Constitution of 1992, it speaks about tenure of members of Parliament. And it tells us that if a member of Parliament is absent without the permission in writing of the Speaker, and is unable to offer a reasonable explanation to the Parliamentary Committee on Privileges from 15 sittings of a meeting of Parliament during any period that Parliament has been summoned to meet and continues to meet. And then there are many others right up to age in terms of what tenure means and when a member of Parliament can continue to serve in Parliament or not. I believe it is in accordance with this particular provision that the Speaker of Parliament had no other option but, of course, to refer the matter to the Privileges Committee of Parliament. Indeed, you were also aware that there is a ruling of the Supreme Court which actually also supports this position of the Constitution. And so, be that as it may, we may have been informed, for example, that Madam Adwoa Safo is on an indefinite leave of absence, that she has some family commitments that she has to meet. We know that first and foremost, the easiest journey to actually dealing with this matter simply requires His Excellency the President Akufo-Addo to sign a letter, literally terminating the appointment. It is the easiest. It avoids all the hearings, it avoids all the murmurings, it ends the debates, and literally presents us an opportunity to go out there and engage somebody else. You know, in any case, Madam Adwoa Safo is a member of the New Patriotic Party. Whether she's present here in Ghana or not, I don't think that takes away her membership. I don't think that also stops her from continuing to hold herself out in any way that she can use to support her party wherever she finds herself. I mean, we have party political associations across the world. I'm sure they're in the United States of America as well. What I believe that we need to bring home is the fact that she actually leads a very critical ministry, one that actually is responsible for social protection and literally handles the most vulnerable in our environment. As we struggle, for example, to live up to the responsibilities under the SDGs, it is extremely important that a ministry designed to handle matters that are peculiar to women and children should certainly not be without leadership. It is the case that usually we have caretaker ministers, but has that caretaker minister not literally outlived any semblance of her own usefulness in that space? That apart, the said minister also handles an equally critical ministry, that of sanitation, which also remains an equal challenge. In the sense that currently we have these floods ongoing, it actually places enormous burdens on this particular caretaker minister. But be that as it may, it is my particular personal position that we should adhere strictly to the Supreme Court ruling, that by now there will be no need, for example, to refer these matters even to the Privileges Committee if we were actually adhering in stricto sensu to the legislation. It would then mean basically that we're just going to go out there, terminate the appointment as is required. But then, of course, we all know that this is purely politics, more than administrative, more than procedural.
How is it purely politics?
Well, Bella, you do know that considering the peculiarities of the 8th Parliament, I mean, in the President's own words, the majority hangs on a hairline and now literally hangs on one majority, if there's anything like that. So in terms of a majority of one, what do you do when that one is absent? Whether for good reason or bad reason, at least she's a member of Parliament. She was elected by one of the largest constituencies in Ghana in terms of population, in terms of representatives on the voter register. So certainly makes it very difficult, even for the ruling government. Because ask yourself, what do you do with this huge register of voters? And we also do know that Madam Adwoa Safo's father owns a huge church with large farms in the same constituency. And I have always believed that that actual, constituent of hers, that unique constituency built by her father, is one of her biggest bases in terms of support in the constituency, and has literally returned it to Parliament on each occasion. We all know that even in the last election, everybody expected her to lose, even in the primaries. But eventually, she managed to survive it. And you know, I am a parent too, and I can understand that any parent will be concerned about the welfare of her family, that it may require you at any given time to be absent. But I don't see what the correlation is between her absence and how we man this critical ministry.
You don't?
No. What has it got to do with that?
Well, but she says that the only person who can terminate is the president. And in the meantime...
Which is why I started by telling you that it's the easiest.
In the meantime, she still holds herself as minister. So clearly she does not want to let go of the position.
You know, look, let's stop picking up on these issues and generalizing things that we ought not to be generalizing. It is a very simple fact that it is not only the case that one unique individual can handle matters of that ministry. We also remember the mantra about having the men and the women. I mean, Akosua is sitting here. Why not? She will handle the ministry beautifully as a
Is she ready to?
Oh, she's more than ready.
Focusing on the youth.
She's more
She
than
said
ready.
she's focusing on the
Oh, no,
youth.
no. Even if she was nominated, I'm sure she'll be able to sail through Parliament and all that and be a good and worthy replacement. There are many other women, even besides Akosua. So it's not for want of finding someone to lead that ministry. You understand? It is more really to do with securing that one member majority that we need so badly.
Is that what it really is?
Look, it is merely politics. It cannot be. Why? Look, if I were a minister and I were unable to perform my duties for whatever reason, you understand? And I have refused probably to take the easier option, which is to resign, maybe for personal reasons, because it will go onto your record and all of that. And maybe you don't even want to give any facts beyond what you've given. The best thing is for the president to do what? Appoint a new person worthy as a replacement. It's as simple as that. In terms of the matters to do with Parliament, the Constitution is very straightforward. If an individual cannot represent their constituents and it goes on for 15 sittings in any parliamentary cycle, it is straightforward. We declare the seat what? Vacant. In terms of the Honorable Henry Korte, for example, and the Honorable Kennedy Japan, we know that in Kennedy's regards, in particular, he went for surgery. Those ones take very long. We've all fallen ill at one time or the other. And sometimes Parliament is also a place of reason and logic. So certainly maybe the Speaker believed that knowing these things, and he himself, having had his very public health issues, would be certainly more considerate and probably want to err on the side of caution. So maybe it's just out of the abundance of caution that he has actually transferred this matter to the Privileges Committee. He's given them 2 weeks to come up with a report. But that should not in any way take away the fact that the President, Suomotu, has the fullest advantage as being the head of the executive to terminate and appoint as he so wills. In any case, they can even find ways to continue to provide whatever support Madame Adwoa Safo requires. The new patriotic party can even have its general secretary engage even the constituents, have a conversation with them about maybe whatever unique circumstances make it impossible for Madame Adwoa Safo to be absent. But certainly not punish the ministry and whatever work is outstanding and requires the full attention of a day-to-day minister, because they are actually supposed to administer the functions in that ministry. You know, I will empathize any day, but we've seen Madame Adwoa Safo. We've seen her on TikTok. We've seen her in that rather very infamous interview that I don't even know whether it was... I didn't even understand the whole import of that interview. I think all she wanted to...
herself?
But I don't think the explanation came out very well. I also think that she tried to say that she had not been aware. Maybe, I don't know how Parliament serves its processes, but I do know that when you serve it on the Clerk of Parliament, for example, it constitutes notice to the whole world and includes the person who will be most affected
even went further and beyond.
by that notice.
Sent
Absolutely.
an email, sent a WhatsApp.
And in any case, when you are out
her.
of office, you actually leave a returning address, you leave your email address, you leave your last known place of abode. She has family, unless they're trying to say that she's not even in contact with her family or that she's actually not speaking to anybody else. But if she's really speaking to her family and in touch with them, they ought to find a way to reach her. I mean, even in court, what do? The orders of court require that you serve via substitution or to paste it on the person's last known place of abode or the last known address. And once you do that, you can go ahead with the matter as though the person were present because you have done all that is within reason. It is why when the bailiffs even serve these things, they even attach an affidavit of service so that you know exactly what time it was served and how it was served and whether or not that constitutes adequate service in the eyes of the law. So I think we should stop, trying to extend and expand these issues beyond the boundaries of them. And yes, you see, it is a very narrow line that we all walk as women. I have suffered my very fair share, very personally, of how men will try to jostle you out of a space, how they'll try to undermine your relevance or your competence at any level. It doesn't matter where you find yourself. How they will try even to belittle as much as possible your contribution. So yes, for those of us who find ourselves on these platforms, we do our very best to be as supportive as we can be and to try as much as possible not to repeat the same mistakes that others make when it comes to our levels of engagement and whether or not we deserve to be in the places that we are in.
Okay.
But be that as it may, we must also be realistic that beyond the female inclusion, there is also a need for us to remember that we must be even more responsible than even our men folk. That when we are engaged or nominated for these roles, we ought to do our very best so that we do not continue to feed into that stereotype. Okay. It will also mean then that eventually, each time somebody wants to consider you for an appointment, and I remember I had this conversation with another very senior female executive. She spoke about the challenges to do with childcare, the challenges to do with family, how far her constituency actually is, and it takes her like 8 hours to get there and back, and she had a new relationship and how it was putting enormous pressure on the relationship and on her kids. So certainly, we grapple with a lot more than our men folk. And certainly we do know that when you also have young children, there's even more of a responsibility on you. And I have no qualms about appreciating whatever the unique circumstances of the Honorable Adwoa Safo may be.
Okay.
But I have no doubt in my mind that the fact that the president refuses to do the needful is purely for political expediency.
Is it really?
It is just simply the love for the majority of one.
Is it really the case? Because there's a study that has been conducted by the Global Info Analytics, and they have indicated that Honorable Adwoa Safo's popularity has waned over time, even in her constituency. We'll come back and talk about that, and we'll find out from Akosua if that's probably, the reason why they're still keeping her, the fact that she still remains quite popular there, and they're scared of losing out on votes from the side of the NPP. Keep watching. This is The Big Issue on TV3Newday. Welcome back. This is still The Big Issue on TV3Newday. Still in the studios with me, I have lawyer Joyce Ba-Muktari. She is a special aide to former President John Dramani Mahama and also former Deputy Minister of Transport. Akosua Menu is a Deputy CEO of the National Youth Authority. We're talking about Honorable Adwoa Safo and her protracted absence from Parliament and also from the Ministry of Gender and Social Protection. Now, there was a study that was conducted by the Global Information Analytics, and the executive director of this institution, Musa Dankwa, has been speaking on recent studies that they conducted. In fact, in this year alone, they have conducted 2 studies. One was done on the 14th of February, 2022, and they just wanted to test the atmosphere of the constituency because Honorable Adwoa Safo had been gone for a while. So they sampled about 587 random men and women, and they asked them various questions. One of them was that at that time, if Honorable Adwoa Safo was to be recalled from Parliament, would they agree? 47% of them said no, they still wanted her back in Parliament. 44% said yes, and some 9% said it was not applicable. But if there was a by-election that very day or that very week, they're saying that 44% of the voters would have gone for Elikplim Akurugu, who was the MP, the candidate for the NDC during the 2020 election. She came quite close. I mean, she closed the gap a bit between the NPP and the NDC during the 2020 elections. And Honorable Michael Quay, who lost the parliamentary candidature seat to Honorable Adwoa Safo by some 4 votes, 43% of them would have voted for him. Now, just recently, they conducted another research, and it says that even though in 2020, Honorable Adwoa Safo won by some 58.35% of the votes, this time around, only about 50.3% said they would actually vote for her should she run. So clearly her popularity is waning, and a number of them are saying that it's clearly because she hasn't really done anything for her constituents. Lawyer was just talking about the fact that this decision to not terminate her contract by the president is purely political, because we all understand that she also has a very strong constituency in some parts of Dom Kabinya because of her father's church as well. And so there's this fear that if we take her out, we might lose the seat. But if her popularity is even, waning at this point, you don't think that it would have been prudent that at this time when everyone is complaining, the president should have terminated her contract?
I think popularity for any MP is dependent on how visible they are. So in some constituencies where we lost in the 2020 election, some of the reasons were from the constituents that they were not seeing the MP. And sometimes seeing is not actually even any heavy lifting. It's just showing up here and there, waving at people, you know, going from shop to shop or house to house routinely. Some MPs even do it quarterly, where they zone out some of the polling stations in their constituencies and do visits and touch base with their polling station executives and other members of their constituency. Now, as to whether, so it's two things. She's an MP and then she's a minister. The president can effect change when it comes to her ministry. And also, when it comes to her parliamentary seat, it's not necessarily the president that will dictate what happens. So when it comes to the Ministry of Gender, of which Madame Cecilia Dapa is a caretaker minister. And here, that's why I don't want us to downplay her role there. Yes, she's caretaker minister. She's actually, she has an oversight over the ministry now, and she's doing her best. So it's not to say that the ministry doesn't have leadership. Okay, it's not to say that it's like the constituency of Dome Kwabenya where she's the bona fide leader of the ministry. No. Change can happen. It could even be that people are rotated every year in the ministry. The point is somebody overseeing the ministry? They are. The challenge is when it comes to...
who is overwhelmed. I mean, it rained yesterday. We saw the level of filth that accompanied the floods. So
if we're going to talk about floods, you had a conversation about
no,
floods.
I get you, but I'm just saying that if we're talking about
floods,
Honorable Cecilia Dapa is already overwhelmed by the sanitation ministry.
Bella, for the first
the gender
time,
ministry also requires a lot of attention.
I absolutely understand what you're saying. However, some of the examples are a bit is reaching. So, for instance, floods do happen. Flash floods happen. I mean, for the first time, I saw videos of parts of Cape Coast and other areas. So there are structural problems that we need to talk about. But I would not think that Madame Celia is not doing her best there. Now let's come to the
she may be doing her best, but is that the best for the ministry?
Yeah,
because in recent times, I mean, even from the Kulpi, boys who were sodomized, up until recently, when a 15-year-old was also, stripped naked and flogged in the Fuasa Irebi, constituency. Yes. All these issues have come up. If we had a gender minister, don't you think that there would have been a bit more protection, should have been a bit more proactive in addressing some of these issues? We haven't seen that happen.
I think that one of the things that often happens for some ministries is people do the work behind the scenes and do not actually put much attention to what they're doing. So if you're not aware of the interventions there, you might think that there's nothing happening. So if you take the case of the young lady at Ofuase, which is the constituency of the Minister of Information, I actually saw a Facebook post by him where on Saturday he went to see the young girl. So between GES, even social welfare and other departments within the ministry, there's been overtures to that constituency.
They have been there?
Yes. They've actually been in touch. So what happened?
But you don't think that the minister's presence, at least just to show that she's concerned about this situation and is going to do everything. It doesn't have to
you mean Madame Cecilia Dapa?
No, I'm talking about Honorable Adwoa Safo
is not even in the jurisdiction.
But so, imagine if she were.
So point is, if she was, possibly she would have made that visit there. It's not. Truth is, there are so many ills when it comes to gender-based violence in Ghana. The data is quite shocking, and that what we even have is what comes up to the media's attention. There's so much that is covered up by family, by friends, and whatnot. But the conversation should pivot back to what you were saying about the political implications. Yes, if it should be that the minister, the MP for the area, is not there, chances are, if you poll, it would affect the outcome of the poll because they don't see her. So if she's not being seen, it's assumed she's not working, which will call for a certain change to be made. And unfortunately, on that, there cannot be any defense for that. What clearly would happen is for those who feel that no matter what, she's a 3-time MP, and she was doing a marvelous job, and Dome Kwabenya is one of the most populous constituencies, and she does her best. When it comes to the conversation about her father and the church, I mean, it's something of a perception, really.
Is it?
It's more of a perception because the data doesn't add up.
How does it not add up? I mean, even this recent research, it showed clearly that in Taifa North and Taifa South, that's where her strongest constituents are.
Someone sent a message that, the constituency, I don't even know any single church member. the church is not in the constituency. It's assumed that the constituency members go to her father's church, right?
It is not in the constituency?
Well, I have never attended the church.
It is, because the majority of them are in Taifa North and Taifa South. So majority of them live in the constituency.
But I won't see the data. If you tell me, oh, it's 2,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 of the church members that live in the constituency, then we're having a valid conversation. But to say that the church members go there and they live in the constituency, but despite that fact, you could even poll same church members and they would say that maybe it's time to look at another leader for the constituency. And it just doesn't happen overnight. It's processes. If it's going to be a by-election, based on what will there be a by-election? Currently, the committee is going to sit, the Privileges Committee, and I hope she will avail herself, because I agree with Joyce when she says that when considerations are made for women to occupy positions of leadership, the charge is bigger. The considerations that are made are not will not be waved away just because of your gender. No, but however, when you do well, it's almost as if you are expected to do well anyway. It's not seen as extraordinary, as it were, if it was a man in the position doing well. There'll be a lot of fanfare and hula baloo and all of that. But in terms of the political applications, polling 587 people out of 100 and...
Sampling is allowed.
Sampling is allowed, but I'm asking, I'd want to know where, when, how. Which people?
Within the constituency, there were random people that were selected. Yes. So this was random selection.
It could also be that, and that was just one time. That was two different polls that you mentioned, and it didn't even consider her. It considered somebody else who had run up against her in the constituency, which was...
But the second one, which was conducted in April 2022, that considered her. It was a question about her.
I'm not surprised about the April poll, just because a year is a long time to be away. And she visited during a couple of months ago, and then she commissioned a project. Now, even with the political bit that she's saying, even without her presence in Parliament, a very major bill was passed. You get it? Which for some people, and even these are people that were diehard supporters of her, who were saying that it's come to a point where it's almost as if she's slammed the door in their faces because they were supporting her. It's taking some sort of selfish personal interest, but now the conversation on an unwell child now changes the tone of the issues again. But two things. One, that would want to that you'd want something more definite from the Privileges Committee.
Okay.
Right? In terms of what the outcomes would be, it will be when she avails herself and whatever reasons she gives for that. Two, that you'd want, this keeps coming up, that she resigns, and that there's been enough time, and of course, for a sensitive position for which she occupies, we should want to see a substantive person in that seat. That is definitely above my pay grade, and there are so many constitutions.
Is the president afraid to fire her from the ministry?
Oh, definitely not.
He's not?
The president is never scared to fire anybody. I'm saying it's two things. From the ministry to, how do you call it, to the seat. The seat, the president can dictate what happens in the constituency. He can,
Okay.
But
he's not afraid to fire anybody.
No. When it comes to...
Why has he not fired the health minister? There have been calls for him to be fired after the whole, Sputnik V saga.
Oh, Bella,
the finance minister is another person that many have been calling for him to be fired.
Before a committee in Parliament, and we did see what happened. He gave his reasons to what's transpired with Sputnik. I think we've moved past that in leaps and bounds when it comes to...
Have we? We still have not been given a breakdown of the expenditure of COVID funds till date.
COVID funds, now, I think that the Minister of Finance has not hidden anything. It's definitely not. And in a couple of weeks, he's going to appear before Parliament, and we'll definitely see line by line expenditure.
Is Honorable Adwoa Safo still being paid every month?
That I cannot speak to that.
But at the end of her tenure, she would be given ex gratia, would she not?
Bella, unfortunately, what the Constitution dictates is what is done. If we want ex gratia to end, then we need to sit down and say, you know what, you're an agent of change. Let's make enough noise. Let's put the parliamentarians or their toes to table it before Parliament and change it.
Okay.
So then it's a constitutional provision that cannot just be waived off. I have issues with ex gratia as well, and how people multiple times benefit from it, but it's not something that I can change on my own.
Okay, let me bring Honorable Lawyer Joyce Bauer in we can move on to our next.
I have no doubt in my mind that, you know, there's 3 MPs involved. Just to reiterate the fact that whatever happens should affect all 3, and that if indeed they have been absent for the 15 sittings, as indicated by either the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal, I'm not even sure which of them actually rendered the ruling on that matter, I think that the pronouncement has been made. So if we want to go strictly according to the law, like Akosua likes to say, then let's follow what the ruling says straight away. And it affects all 3 of their MPs. I don't want us to belabor the point. And then when you talk about who votes for who, you know, we're not in a homogeneous country. Factors that affect MPs across the country are well known. Either they are on tribal lines or, you know, various ethnic considerations and all of that. So these are not matters that we should haggle over, and I don't want to, you know, I receive a lot of messages too about who votes for who comes from where to vote. And I mean, check out Adwoa's family background. They have a huge holding in that space, and that must account for something. She's a young lawyer, very aspirational, you know, very dynamic when she was in Parliament as one of the leaders in Parliament. So I have no doubt in my mind that all of these things would actually, one way or the other, give her enormous support in the eyes of the general public. But one, the president can't fire her, irrespective of who is a caretaker minister. Have you heard that the caretaker minister has so far spoken to the social protection bill that is currently before that ministry? She has no time. It is not within her purview. Maybe she oversees things to do with everyday spending and maybe programs that need to be attended. But I even asked a question. Are there no deputies in the ministry? I think that's something you can check for me, Bella. Because surprisingly, and I've been one of those who has been advocating that maybe some of these ministries do not require deputy ministers. Because I'm curious, was there ever a deputy nominated?
There was.
Absolutely.
She actually did have a deputy.
And I remember, yes, absolutely. And she's a member of Parliament too. And I have never heard her ever since. Ever, not once.
There were even concerns about why she was not made the substantive minister.
Certainly, fantastic. Sometimes I thank God that I have such a beautiful memory. It just suddenly struck me that there was something about that ministry that we've all not averted our minds to. So, of course, there are deputies in that ministry. And so if a deputy is well qualified to deputize and the substantive is absent, why do we even need to go out there and get a caretaker minister? What are we hiding? What is in the ministry? It's a public space. And we don't need to create all these unnecessary bureaucracies and duplication of rules. For what purpose? And then look, be that as it may, women must also set good examples so others can follow. And you know, when we keep seeing the Honorable Adwoa Safo posting these photographs of a very happy woman, there's one yesterday about her and her son in particular who was graduating from high school, where she's even posted the certificate and all of that. You know, if Madam Adwoa Safo is unwell, I'm sure the doctors can give her an excuse duty, indicate whether she's able to come back at this time or not. I'm sure if it is to do with her family, she can write a very beautiful letter and even require that maybe her activities be suspended for the time being. There's nothing wrong. But I do not subscribe to any decision, be it of the Privileges Committee or otherwise, that would find ways maybe to victimize Madam Adwoa Safo for the same offense as the other 2 male MPs are being accused of.
But is her case not peculiar to some extent?
It is actually very unique. It is why we said there are always extenuating circumstances. And in her case, she's reporting that she has family commitment and all of that. But that's what I'm saying. The easiest, beyond traveling all the way to the Privileges Committee, is to have His Excellency President do what? Nominate a substantive minister. Or at least promote the deputy to an acting role, so at least she can take responsibility fully for that ministry. In terms of her parliamentary duties, I don't mind whether her popularity is waning, whether it's at its peak and all of that. You know that social media does play a certain role. And so if she's always on social media and appeals to her constituents and talks to them, naturally whatever polling or sampling you do would actually generate a certain type of result. But yes, it gives women, one, a very bad name sometimes. Secondly, it creates a wrong impression about our professionalism on occasion. But certainly she should not be held out separately from what has happened in the past.
Okay.
And so if they've all been absent without due permission or express permission, then yes, action should be taken. But I will come back to the position that we should follow the tenets of the law,
all right,
at least fully, and call on the president to do the needful.
Okay, let me just get your views on this briefly before we wrap up. So yesterday, former Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Professor Kwesi Botwe, had been speaking at the launch of the Children of House number D13, South Suntresu Kumasi, which is a book jointly authored by the Ahoys. And you remember that Johnny Hughes had a conversation with the family ahead of the book launch. Now, the former Minister of Finance had said that our current economy is showing semblance of what pertained in the early 1980s. He says, sadly, we don't appear to have learnt our lessons and are moving now so perilously close to the edge of the precipice where we were in the early 80s with our economy saddled with debts. I don't know if we have time to play the video so I can get their views on it. Producers, can we play the video? All right, please take a look.
Although sadly, we don't appear to have learned our lessons and are moving now so perilously close to the edge of the precipice where we were in the early 80s, with an economy saddled with debt, in which we can't even pay and meet our social obligations to the poor. That legacy is epitomized in the language and the content, the laughable content of this great book, and I urge you all to buy it.
Akosia, what do you make of this statement by the former minister?
The thinking worries me a bit. Now, if in the 1980s, Africa was described as a lost decade. If we put it into context in Ghana, in 1980, we had recorded negative growth since 1960. Now, in the 1960s, even from 1970 to 1981, GDP was growing negatively at a 3.2% rate. If we are going to take in the last decade, even in Ghana, we are nowhere near that, what he's prescribing. So it's throwing that out there without scrutiny doesn't give it any, there's no academic value to it. If you probe it, it's completely wrong. Now, some of the two issues that are compounding and not just causing problems even in Ghana, but globally. You can't wave off the Russian-Ukraine war. Ukraine, and I was looking at data when it came to food inflation. Look at the quantum of things that we import, and that's adding to the challenges we have. We actually source 40% of our wheat from Ukraine. Yeah. If you take Egypt, they are actually quite struggling, really, because they are sourcing majority of that from Ukraine as well. So if we're going to put that into context, contrary to the trend, because the 1980 didn't just arrive with the economy falling, there was internal mismanagement. And if you'd remember, it led up to two coups, which some still glorify the late founder of the NDC and former president for. Now, I don't think that we have those challenges, and I don't think that even despite that, there's food shortage. People still can buy food, but the question is at what cost? And cost has come up again as a conversation where people are even calling for the president to actually put in price controls. Price controls have negative repercussions as well. But Bella, if we put it into context, I saw one of the media houses, I believe it was Joy FM, where farm gate prices, when you pick up the tomatoes from the farm, the bulk of it in terms of how much is sold, and when it's transported into the sea, the difference alone in that. And people are saying, why are Ghanaians like that? Why do Ghanaians trade? Why do Ghanaian traders inflate prices the way they do? Sometimes they speculate that, okay, because there's an upward trend in the cost of fuel and whatnot, they are going to increase their prices to care for future increase in fuel. And of course, we know that for them to move their product or produce from one point to another, it is that. But coming to what Dr. Kwesi Botwe said, it certainly isn't we're certainly not in the 1980s. If I recall a little history, Latin America collapsed in the 1980s. Two shocking increases in fuel collapsed economies. Why? Because they couldn't service their foreign debt. We had a challenge here as well, where we're saying COVID has impacted our economy. We need an extra revenue. E-levy resulted in fiscals in Parliament. That's because government was in a very tight position. So when it comes to these things, you can't just throw that out there and say we are heading into the 1980s. Okay. There was a trend that led to what the 1980s exhibited at the time. And I don't think we are anywhere near it, nor should we anticipate that we are going to get there.
Lawyer, I mean, in the early 80s, Ghana's economy was described as an advanced state of collapse. Now, we've heard from the finance minister who also said that if we had not even passed the e-levy, our economy would not have survived. And so we were there at that point of collapse. Does it mean that, you know, clearly we really are at that precipice, like the former minister is saying?
You see, I would want us to look at the individual making the state. A very senior statesman, a well-respected individual, an economist by excellence. A man that
we can't hear you. I think your book is on the mic. Okay, yes.
We are talking about an individual who has lived it, experienced it, and is an expert par excellence. I believe that what he has said is actually a thought-provoking statement that will be calling on us, beyond seeking for unnecessary justification, to speak largely to the matters that are currently beforehand. You know, Bella, for the Honorable Dr. Kwesi Botwe to caution about where we are today, and it is why I even took my phone to check. You can Google the page on our GDP and where we've come from. It is almost like a yo-yo bell. It was very high, it was very low, and it has been consistent, at least from 2009 to about 2020. There have been some times when it's been good, when it's been bad. Presently, what we are grappling with is an inflation rate that has been described, not by me or by Dr. Kwesi Botwe, as the highest ever in the history of this country. And it is not because...
Highest in the last 8 years.
In the last 8 years, absolutely.
Because inflation in the 80s was about 58%
exactly. You
increase.
understand?
Yeah.
So let's not belittle people's attempt to draw our attention to the ills in the abysmal financial management into which we have sunk.
Is a strong word.
Well, maybe, but I think you dismissed it in a way that I didn't expect you to do, and I think that is what I'm trying to put in proper perspective.
His opinion should be factual.
So maybe you should say that, but I believe that
was what I did.
No.
I wanted more context to him saying that, because the trends do not support
you only recorded a
portion,
and he said that we were on the verge, and it is like a warning. It is like a food for thought for us to think about. Which is why I say, look, let's learn to show some humility and some respect. I listen to Adwoa when she speaks about people like Ken and how she tries to add a certain buoyancy to the conversation, even though he has been one of the most abysmal in terms of finance ministers in the history. I refuse to be personal about these things. What I'm looking at is what the reality is. We are totally indebted, over-borrowed, over-mortgaged. Above all, we are even on the verge of being unable to sustain our debts. That is not in doubt either. It is not Dr. Kwesi Botwe saying it. Of course, we don't live in the 80s, but there are examples reminiscent of what we are experiencing today. But then even as we are speaking about these things and seeking for some justification, even adding that we expect some sympathy, look at the quantums of payments that are still being made to Ghanaian contractors and consultants. And I know that having worked in the public service, and she will know from where she works, that what we've had on occasion is that people raise certificates and get paid. If you remember, years ago, Smith had a matter where a consultant, or was it a contractor, had died even before the project could be started. Yeah. So there's a good reason why our laws allow us to pay and stagger payments or pay in phases. You know, if we are as broke and we need as much empathy as Akosua wants us all to grant, why do we continue to make these huge payments through single source procurements through various illegalities and breaches of parliamentary processes. And I believe we had a debate on this matter. You know, I like to show respect where is you, because I believe that when we sit here, even younger people follow us. And if I sat here and belittled somebody's contribution to our society or to our economy, or a comment made by a distinguished individual whose credentials you cannot fault, where even persons whose credentials were touted before their announcements were made have failed abysmally, but we are refusing to see because we are blinded by the same partisan conversations that we have. I think that every Ghanaian knows right now that the economy is not on sound footing.
Could we say same at the time when we went to the IMF under the NDC? Because again, back in 1983, we actually went back to the IMF for a loan.
But they said those things, and these were matters on political platforms. You can Google them. As I said earlier, Adwoa and Fatima and all these communicators spoke at length about these things. You remember even the Honorable Safo who had planned to join that conversation in Senchi. At the last minute, pulled out because his party people would not allow him to participate. So, you know, we don't want to rehash these conversations. But we are totally at the wrong place. And I think that any leader who speaks to that matter speaks with a certain sincerity. Because Oboche has never lived anywhere else.
Okay. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us this morning. Akosia Menu is the Deputy CEO of the National Youth Authority. And lawyer Joyce Bar Muktari is a special aide. Yes, we have ended.
There's no retake.
Unfortunately.
I think we can read more about the lost decade of Africa in 1980 and maybe what resulted for the poor indices in Ghana.
Okay.
It's certainly not belittling anybody's
opinion
of
Lawyer Joyce Bar Muktari is a special aide to former President John Dramani Mahama. And we have an exclusive with Musa Superior. He is currently the Deputy CEO of the Forestry Commission, and he has just picked forms and filed nominations to run for General Secretary for the NPP. Is he going to be successful or not? Well, we'll get into that. But quickly, happy birthday to Cynthia Temide Awosika. She's the CEO of Temi House of Cakes. Happy birthday to you. This is from Johnny. And also, happy birthday to Wilson Agbesi, a.k.a. Bobo. Enjoy the rest of the day. Great blessings. And also 52nd birthday to Mr. Stephen Boating of Steve Boat's Fashion at Malam. Enjoy the goodness of God. This is from Bernard. Today on Business News, cash usage is declining as people turn to electronic payments. Increasing fuel prices will work against Bank of Ghana's quest to fight inflation, and former finance minister takes on government. So look forward to all the details at midday, 7 p.m. and extensively at 4:30 p.m. Keep watching. This is TV3 New Day. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, ladies.